Hello and welcome to a brand new MindMastery video. Today I have Athen with me from Mastering the Zodiac, and the plan is to discuss the relationship between astrology, zodiac signs, and the unconscious and archetypes. So, hello again, and thank you for joining my MindMastery interview.
Thanks for having me.
So, you're an astrologer, but quite a unique one because you're using something called True Sidereal Astrology.
Right.
Would you like to tell us more about?
Yeah, so basically in mainstream astrology, they're using an even 30 degrees for each of the constellations. So this actually takes away from the sky, because in the sky the constellations are different sizes, right? So like Virgo is a very large constellation and Cancer is a very small one. So in mainstream they simplify it by using an even 30 degrees. The system I use uses the actual constellations. So this does change the signs from mainstream astrology, but it is basically where all the planets were at the time of that person's birth. Right.
So does it change the sign? For example, I'm Aquarius in a mainstream astrology. Does it change my sign?
Yeah, so it might. There's like a, 4 to 5 chance that it will. So it is most likely that it will, but there's a chance that it might not. Yeah.
All right. So I know that you have your YouTube channel, you have your website, you have your business. So would you like to tell me more about how you use this astrology in your work?
Yeah, so just like most astrologers, the first thing I'll look at is the person's birth chart, which is basically where all the planets were at the time of their birth. And so this shows things like their personality characteristics, some of their life path stuff, if you get into that, kind of what life's helping them develop. And then after the kind of bigger picture stuff, then you can also look at the predictive side of things. Not that I think anything in life is predetermined. I don't think that astrology is predicting anything specifically, but a sort of general construct or a general theme of whatever the person might be experiencing, like about relationships or career or something like that at that time. And then the whole reading is basically geared around helping them cultivate the best qualities of their personality, and then also how to use those life experiences in a way that's very constructive, and how to cultivate their life path.
Right. So it's kind of process of increasing your self-awareness in a sense, because you're learning more about yourself. You're learning more about the potential that you might be having. What I was curious about is, all right, for example, you sit down, you gave a reading to someone. Where are you getting your information from?
So the traditional archetypes of the zodiac, which we've been using for thousands of years, is basically all the aspects of the human experience, or all the aspects of life, sort of divided up into 12 or 13 that then are represented by the archetypes of the zodiac. So it's very similar to like the Jungian archetypes, where you could say that the major 12 archetypes are the major ones that we see in life. It's kind of the same thing with the zodiac. These are the major archetypes of life. Like Cancer, the crab, is about protection. Aquarius, the water bearer, is about progressiveness and innovation. So it's basically life divided up into these different segments. And so whatever, sort of archetypes you have more in your personality, then the more those, qualities are going to come through in your birth chart. Right.
So do you mean that I can have many different signs in my chart, in a sense? So many different archetypes.
Right, which most people aren't aware of. Everyone knows their sun sign, like your Aries or Taurus or whatever. But no, you have your moon sign, and then you also have Mercury, Venus, Mars. All the other planets are in different signs. And all these planets are basically different aspects of the ego, you could say. And so since everyone's ego is multifaceted, by looking at where all the planets are, you're getting a more multifaceted picture of the person's ego.
Right. Is it just the ego, or does it go deeper and, for example, describe someone's unconscious?
Right. So once you get into the outer planets, like you could say from Jupiter and beyond, but especially from Uranus and beyond, it's arguable that those are more of the unconscious qualities. But I would say those are more of the subconscious qualities, because I still think they come through the ego. They're just very, very deep-seated. Unconscious is stuff we're not aware of at all.
Right.
So in that sense, the unconscious in the chart is more like the opposite location of your planets. Because if we take the Jungian definition of the shadow being in the unconscious, basically whatever your ego projects, everything that is not projected by your ego is casting a shadow into your unconscious. So then you could say wherever your planets are, completely opposite those planets would be the signs and qualities of your shadow in that sense. So it does show both, but in the sense of planets themselves, I think they're showing mostly the ego.
Right, right. So there is some potential for discovering your shadow in your, what you call the birth chart.
Yeah.
But it's mostly focused on exploring your conscious personality.
Yeah, it's definitely focused on conscious personality. Yeah.
So has it take a long time for you to learn all this information about all the different archetypes and zodiac signs?
I mean, it's just like every other, profession. It takes time, but it's not that complicated. I mean, anyone can start with just a basic understanding of their own sign. So it's very simple to get started, I feel like. Look at your sun sign. So again, this is different from mainstream. But look at where the sun actually was at the time of your birth. Read a little bit about that archetype, whether it's Aries or Taurus or whatever it is. Look at your moon sign, because the moon is equally as important as the sun. And just start there. Look at your sun and moon. The sun's more of your outer personality. The moon's more of your inner personality. Read about those qualities. And then you can always go deeper. I mean, astrology, just like every other profession, you can, take that scalpel and just go as deep as you want with it, really.
Right.
But it can be as simple as simply looking at archetypes.
And one more thing I was thinking about asking you is, because there's this idea that astrology is not very scientific, right? What is your perspective on that?
Yeah, I really like that question because, astrology doesn't get the time of day in modern science, right? And the main reason is that astrology isn't something that you can really verify, I think, on a very tangible basis. I mean, it's arguable that you could with enough development of astrology, like you could get it more and more narrowed in, because you could say we're at still the infancy of astrology. But I don't think it's meant to be used like that. I think it's meant to be used more like a perspective. So you can't really factually verify perspectives, right? Like, even psychology has this problem. There's aspects of psychology that will never be factually verified and proven, right? Like intuition and things like this. So astrology works more in that abstract realm, which is more about how is the person perceiving life. So again, there's no prediction. Just because your sun's in Leo doesn't mean you're going to specifically be a certain way. It means you're perceiving life through a certain way. And there's these whole range of experiences you can have within that. So to go in and test it all and verify it all through science, like I said, you could possibly do that with a very deep, skill in astrology, but I don't think it's really meant to be used like that. I think it's more of what is the perspective and experience that someone's having in life, and how to work with those experiences in constructive ways.
Right, so it's focused on subjectivity.
Yeah, it's focused on subjectivity in that sense. But at the same time, those subjective perspectives tend to be super accurate. So if you ask someone like, hey, do you perceive life like this? If they have an open mind and they're not just completely stuck like, oh, astrology is just complete BS. As long as they have somewhat of an open mind, those perceptions are super, super accurate. Like, I've never met someone who actually used astrology or uses it enough to be able to say that it's, pseudoscience. Because everyone that I've talked to that uses it, and even the people that are somewhat skeptical about it, it tends to be very accurate for them.
So it is, in a sense, similar to what psychology is going through, because in psychology we also have the spectrum of objective perspective where you can measure all the behaviors, but the more you go into this subjective pole, the less apparently scientific it becomes. Right. But it's very valid for all these people who have these experiences. Right.
So it can be verified, but it's verified from more of a subjective experience versus a very scientific physicality type of nature. It's not meant to be verified like that.
Right. Yeah. So it is, it sounds to me a little bit like diving into this unconscious realm, this abstract realm, and picking certain things relevant to a particular person.
Yeah. So, you're looking at what qualities the person's operating within. What are the constructs they're operating within? Like MBTI, for example. You have all these different types of INFJs, right?
Right.
And there's so many different ways to be an INFJ, but there is still a construct.
Yeah.
Right? So it's the same thing. You're working within Leo, for example. You're working within INFJ, for example. There's an infinite number of ways to express that, but there's still a construct you can look at. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Sounds like something very interesting to do in your spare time. Do you have any advice for our viewers or listeners on how they can use astrology in their everyday life, for example?
Yeah. So don't listen to the mainstream signs because they're not where the planets actually were at the time of your birth. What I recommend is downloading a planetarium software like Star Chart or Stellarium and seeing exactly where the constellations were at the time of your birth. Then you'll see, those specific signs that are for you. So your sun sign, your moon sign are the two that I would recommend. If you do want to look at it in a birth chart form, or if you just want the dates, you can go to masteringthezodiac.com, where I have everything listed for that. But yeah, just start with your actual signs, sun and moon, and just have an open mind and see if it resonates. See if it fits with your perspective and experiences.
So you do have to have this open-mindedness. Like Jung suggested, when you want to explore your unconscious, in a sense, you have to approach it with an open mind and don't have any kind of preconceived ideas or speculations and expectations on what you want to find. Just approach it with an open mind.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, that was very interesting. Thank you very much again for
You're welcome.
being here. And I'll see you in the next video.